My cousin and I were real tree climbers. We climbed lots of trees when we were young. We hung out in a tree house that he built. For us then, it was like the Taj Mahal. He was 2 years older than I, so he was always better at tree climbing than I was. He was stronger, he had a wider reach with his legs and his arms, and he was way braver. But we climbed a lot of trees. Until, when I was about 10 years old, Paul was climbing alone, and he fell, and it was a bad fall. Maybe 20, 30 feet he fell. He had to have his arm amputated at the ripe old age of maybe 12 years old. My whole family and I learned something about what it meant then to go out on a limb, about branches without enough substance underneath to keep us safe, that you have to test a branch first. You have to push against it, but even then you can't always tell because it might be dead on the inside. We learned early on that going out on a limb is dangerous. You might fall. You could get really, really hurt. Today we meet Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus, who goes out on a limb, literally and figuratively. He goes out on a limb. This small man, Zacchaeus, risks his social stature because he was the guy who lived in the mansion down on Lindell with the other Roman leaders who got rich off the backs of the peasants who they occupied and treated more like slaves than anything else. But yet in front of the whole world, he embarrassed the Roman Empire, I suspect, and himself as well, by going out on a limb that day, looking like a fool. But that wasn't it, really. He also looked like an idiot because he climbed out on a limb amongst all these people who hated him. This spectacle of a despised man hanging over their head, they knew that he was part of the reason that they were poor and oppressed, and the Romans were still there. They knew that. They hated him. And here he was in full view, up in a tree, out on a limb, straining to see, straining to hear this Jesus. And in that moment, Zacchaeus is met by the greatest tree climber of all, Jesus. What happened is that Zacchaeus went out on a limb for Jesus, and when Jesus saw how far out on that limb Zacchaeus had gone, he does the same thing. Jesus calls him down. Jesus announces in front of all these people who despised him that this small little man, that's where he wants to stay tonight, at this small little despicable man's house. Jesus returned the favor and went out on a limb for Zacchaeus. Jesus knew he would be ridiculed for doing this. He knew it might not even change Zacchaeus' life. It might be for nothing. This branch might not hold this time. This time Jesus knew that he could fall and fall far and fall flat on his face, in front of his own family, in front of his friends, and in front of all these people he was trying to teach. But he thought this guy, maybe this time, was worth the gamble. And he was willing to look like a fool, like an idiot, for him. But in this case, the risk paid off. In this case, the branch held for both of them. Zacchaeus finds himself. Zacchaeus finds his most generous self, and he turns his life around. He found something in this Jesus that made this change in him possible, that made it possible for him to find his true and most generous self. Following Jesus meant Zacchaeus had a lot more limbs to climb out on for the rest of his life, of course. And not only Zacchaeus, but all the followers of Jesus, who probably looked at this happening in front of their eyes and go, not again. We have to adjust again. Now we have to love this despicable, hated man who's getting rich on our backs. All those followers of Jesus that day, when they found Zacchaeus changing his life, knew what they were in for. They had to change now too. They had to go out on a limb as well. Jesus was always going out on a limb for people. How could we not? How could we not? In his name. How can we not? As people who seek to live his way in this world, you and I are invited again and again and again to leave the safe place and go out on a limb for other people. That means going out on a limb for our own families sometimes, going out on a limb for our friends sometimes, for the stranger even sometimes. And yes, you guessed it, even for that one who hurt you the most, the one you like the least, to go out on a limb for him or for her. It means taking a chance on them. It means being willing to gamble on someone or on something. And in this image-conscious world we live in, where we'd rather do anything than look like an idiot in front of other people, being willing to even look like an idiot, even look like a fool, if they betray me again this time, waste my time, or even waste my money. My friends, the world is filled with tree climbers. We're all sick of the political ads, for example, right now with these last 48 hours before the election. But you know as well as I do that some of those folks are really good candidates who entered this for the right reasons, who are willing to climb out on a limb in front of the whole world and lose and be embarrassed and go home with their head down in shame for having lost so badly, and spent the last 6 months to a year of their life campaigning in front of the world, saying they have a vision only to see it rejected. I've seen some of our students put their life on the line like that in politics and lose. That's a big limb to go out on. I see it referring back to the gospel last Sunday that was about bullying. I see it when I see kids and I see you adults cross the playground to go stand next to the one who's being bullied to defend him, or look across a corporate table and challenge the CEO or whoever else to stand up for the one who might be being bullied by this group. I've seen you do it. I know you've done it, to defend the bullied. I see people go out on a limb when they try to be leaders and they know they're going to take pot shots for it, making the hard decisions. Even behind their back, they'll be getting pot shots. I see it in how people risk their money to be good stewards, who give to causes, nonprofits, the poor, and you don't really know if it's going to be used all the way, and you just kind of hope and trust. You're going on a limb to give this money, and it's not easy for you, but you trust. Will you fall on your face? Will this be wasted? Can you trust that it'll be used well? Week after week, when I see young couples stand up here and give themselves to each other in marriage, are you kidding me? With the stats what they are, to see a young couple go out on a limb for this other human being? I think back 33 years to when I went out on a limb with tears rolling down my cheeks to be a priest. But that wasn't the last time. Every time I stand here. Am I an idiot? And sometimes what I have to say here, because I really believe it's what Jesus wants me to, is not winning me any friends. Or maybe a couple. I see teachers who work after school because somebody's flagging the test again and they just want to do everything they can to help this kid. It might not work. I see bosses who hire young kids right out of college who don't have any experience, going out on a limb for them. Oh my gosh. I see young parents having a kid. They know it's going to be hard. They don't have a clue how hard it's going to be, right, moms and dads? I see it here at the CSC when Kids get up on Sunday morning or walk down here on Sunday night and they got a back-breaking load of homework still to do. And they don't really want everybody to know they're Christian because they haven't figured it out all the way. And then their roommate says, why do you do that? And they try to find words and they've never tried to explain it before, and they're going out on a limb for their faith. I see it all the time. RCIA, gosh, young women and men, old too, who are thinking about changing the course of their life and living their way or Jesus' way now as a Catholic Christian, and that's a huge step for them. Is this Catholic branch going to hold? Kids who sign up for retreats, who've never been on a retreat, and they sit there on Friday night going, what the heck am I doing here? Limb after limb, branch after branch, you're doing it. It's happening all around you all the time. But I guess I want to ask you, who's done it for you? Who went out on a limb for you? Who saw something in you worth betting on over the years? Who took a chance on you? Who was willing to look like an idiot in front of the world for loving you? I can't help but think when I ask myself that question of all the people who have stood by me and forgiven me for my dumb choices again and again and again. Every act of forgiveness is somebody going out on a limb for us. Who did that for you? Who put their name on the line to back you up? It is, of course, the truth that it's what God first did for all of us in this Jesus. For all of humanity, really, in the incarnation, God went out on a limb for us to take on flesh and blood. Is it not what Jesus did as well with his life, even his death? Was it all for nothing for him? Did the limb break underneath of him? Did he make a fool of himself in front of the world because he gave it all? And we, so many, don't really care. Live our lives like it never, ever really happened. And let me ask, are you willing to go out on a limb for this Jesus yourself? Can you remember any time when you really can say you went out on a limb for Jesus? For sure, coming here this morning is one of those limbs. But can you say you've thrown your lot with him and trusted him and are willing to look like an idiot to this world sometimes for trusting him? His branch to hold? When was the last time you can say you went out on a limb for another human being? Family, friend, stranger, enemy. You know, there's a reason I walked in here with this on today, looking like an idiot. Oh, Halloween, for sure. But more really. In this business of love and of faith, we got to be willing to look like an idiot, an absolute idiot, to risk our popularity and our carefully crafted, ever so precious images that we work so hard to keep up in front of the world. To gamble it all, to face plant in front of the world, if that's where it leads. Because isn't that what we're being asked to do? That in the business of loving and believing, we're being asked to go out on a limb.